A little bit later on, we will start some code along exercises where we will be writing HTML for the first time. And right now I'm just going to introduce some of the things that we'll be seeing in that upcoming exercise. So here we're going to look at the HTML syntax, the basic document structure, and how to format text and insert images and links into HTML. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And the reason why it's called a markup language is that it doesn't really have any logic or behavior in the way that a programming language does, but really what it does is it simply surrounds content in order to tell the browser how it should display that content. And the way it does this is through a series of elements. So different elements in HTML will format content in different ways. And elements are made up of a starting tag and sometimes an ending tag. And you can see the starting tag and ending tag here are surrounding some content in the middle. So for example, in place of this word contents here, imagine that we had the sentence hello world, and we wanted to tell the browser to format that sentence as a paragraph to separate it out from other paragraphs within the text. What we would do is we would use the p element, which is made up of the starting p tag and closing p tag, to surround that sentence that says hello world. And the way that would look is we would have the starting tag would be less than p greater than, and then the sentence hello world, and then we would end it off by saying less than / p greater than. So you can see that the starting tag has the ability to pass in additional options that will change the way the content is formatted. And the way we do that is inside of the less than and greater than of the starting tag, we put a space after the tag name, and then we can have any number of attributes and values, which is made up of the attribute name and then an equal symbol, and then in quotes the particular value for that attribute. All HTML pages follow a common document structure, and at the outermost level here you'll see that all of the code is enclosed within this HTML element made up of the starting HTML tag and ending HTML tag, and this just tells the browser that everything in between these opening and closing HTML tags is to be interpreted as HTML code. And within this HTML element, you can see that the page is then broken up into two main sections. So all HTML pages have these two main sections, and that is the head and the body of the document. So inside of the head element, we will have all sorts of metadata, and we're going to take a look at some elements that go in here later, but these are going to be things like search terms for search engines and the title of the page and links to style sheets. And then here in the body section, we're going to have all of the visible content of the page, such as the text content that the user can see, all of your images and links. At the very top of our HTML page, we're always going to start off with the doc type element, and you'll notice that this is a special element. It doesn't actually have a closing tag like the other ones we've seen so far, and this one just starts off with the exclamation mark, doc type, and then a space, and then you specify which version of HTML you're using. And in HTML5 it's very simple. If you just say doc type space HTML, the browser assumes that it is an HTML5 document. HTML also provides us with various size headings, and these range from the largest H1 all the way down to the smallest H6, and these will physically make the text larger and smaller and will also imply greater importance for search engines. These are some other common text elements in HTML. This first one is the p element, which designates a paragraph. This next one is a line break, and that will create a line return. And we also have HR, which is a horizontal rule or a line across the page. And the pre-tags allow us to surround content that has spaces and line returns in it, and it will maintain all of those spaces within the browser. We also have the following logical styles, M and strong. M, which stands for emphasize, will italicize the text, and strong will make the text bold. These are some common deprecated tags that you don't want to use anymore. These were left around from previous versions of HTML, but in HTML5 we'll no longer use these, such as B for bold, I for italic, U for underline, S for strike through. We also won't be using menu, center, applet, or the font element. HTML also gives us the ability to create lists of different types. One of these types is the unordered list, which you can see is created using this UL element, which is made up of the opening UL tag and the closing UL tag. And then inside of it, you'll notice that nested here we have the LI element, which is made up of the opening LI tag and the closing LI tag. And here in between we have the content, which is an individual list item. So UL stands for unordered list and LI stands for list item. And what this will do is it will actually show a bullet point next to each list item. We also have ordered lists, and you'll notice that the only difference between the unordered list and ordered list is simply that we use the OL as the parent element instead of UL we used for unordered list. So the ordered list will show numbers next to each list item, whereas the unordered list will show bullet points. You also have definition lists made up of the DL element, and then nested within we have the DT and the DD tags. So DT is for the definition term and DD is for the definition. We can use the IMG element to embed images, and you can see that this particular element does not have a closing tag. So whereas with a paragraph we have an opening P tag and a closing P tag, and that's very essential to tell the browser that this is the beginning of the paragraph and this is the end of the paragraph. However, with an image, there's no text content that goes in between. So the image tag itself only has a single opening tag, and that's using the IMG tag, and there's several attributes we can see here. So the first one is the SRC attribute, which stands for source. And this is telling the browser where to look for that image that we're embedding here at this part of the HTML page. So here I'm just using a generic file name, myimage.jpg. We also have the alt attribute, which here is giving alternative text. This is text that's meant for screen readers, for the visually impaired, and it's also really useful for search engines as well. We also have the title attribute, which here we can display some text that will appear if the user hovers the mouse over this image for a period of time. The title text will appear. You can also specify optionally a width and height for your image using the width and height attributes. Next, let's take a look at links. So we'll be looking at the different attributes inside of the link, different types of links, relative versus absolute paths. And we'll also look at different types of links, such as the URL link, a named anchor link, and a mail to link. This first link at the top here is a basic URL link. What we're doing is we are linking from one web page to another page. And the way this works is it starts off with the opening A tag, and then we put a space and we give it an attribute. And here this is href, which stands for hypertext reference. And we're telling it basically that we want to reference this other page. So we're giving it here the full path or the absolute path of http://www.examplesite.com. So when we click this link, it's going to change the browser or navigate the browser to this URL here. And then what we do is we pass it that URL within quotes after the equal symbol here. So again, that's A for the opening A tag, and then a space, and then we use the href attribute and we set it equal to the value of the www.example.com, and then we use the greater than symbol to close out this opening A tag. So the opening A tag goes from here to here, and then here we have the text, which is actually the part of the link that's clickable. So this is the content that's being surrounded by the opening and closing A tag, and this is what's actually clickable. Down here is an example of the exact same type of link, except that instead of surrounding text, here it's surrounding the text, this is a link, and here we're actually surrounding an image. So we can also make images into links, or make the images clickable so that they will move to another place in the website. Here we also have a mail to link, and this one's the same except for here inside of the href we've started off with mail to : and then an email address. So what this will do is if you click this link, it'll actually bring up the user's default email editor. Here we have a named anchor link, and the way this works is you give an identity to a particular tag on the page. Here's a paragraph I've given the ID of tips, and then down here in the link, by saying hashtag tips or #tips, what happens is when we click on this link, it will actually scroll to this place on the page. So let's talk about relative versus absolute paths. An absolute path is when you are linking to a full URL or a location somewhere else on the web. So if I give it the full HTTP location here, which is http://www.example.com, this is an example of a full path or a absolute path. So when we click this link, it's going to navigate to somewhere else on the web. We also have a relative path, and relative means that it's linking to something relative to the page that we're currently on. And this is typically used to link to other pages within the same website. So for example, this is a link going to the About page. So if I'm on the home page, if I click this link, I'm going to go to the About page. And because these pages are in the same folder, we can just simply give the name of the file, and we don't have to give the full or absolute path. Last but not least, let's talk about validation. So this is a really important part of HTML development, is along the way, you might have little typos or issues with your code, and we can always validate the code to make sure there's no errors in the code by pasting it in here at one of these validation engines. So this is the one I'm going to recommend, which is the official validator at validator.w3.org. And we'll take a look at that in the upcoming example.